Okay, I think we are going to start now. We are where? I would like to give the first say to Eka, our host. Eka?
Thank you, Sandra. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for the coming here, being with us, and warmly welcome all of our foreign partners and guests. Here in Georgia, the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia and my department is a policymaker in the field of telecommunications. And I would like to mention that our main goal nowadays and main priority is to make the internet freely accessible, like open, flexible, and secure to the population and the SMEs and enterprises. So, in second hand, we support of development of the digital economy and internet development throughout the country. On this direction, we have the close cooperation with the international relevant organizations and like community in one hand, and in other hand, for us it's very good thing that the EuroDIG event will be held in Georgia in this year, and I would like to thank the Secretariat of EuroDIG. Thank you, Sandra, for giving us this mandate to hold this event in Tbilisi, and it will be a further promotion of our national internet governance. One of the main points I would like to mention of is our National Internet Governance Forum. Since 2015, this event was held twice in Georgia by supporting of the Ministry of Economy, and main idea, main goal of this event is to put together all relevant interesting bodies like governmental and non-governmental entities, and like use and all specialists of the technologies to discuss the further development of the internet governance. So our discussions today is very important because we are planning to identify the main subjects of the next EuroDIG, and I hope all of us will actively cooperate today. So thank you very much for coming again, and I wish you successes in today's work. Thank you. So now I'm waiting for Sandra. Yeah. Oh, Thomas, please.
So it seems that I'm next. Hello. For those who don't know me, my name is Thomas Schneider. I work for the Swiss government, and I'm one of the so-called institutional, we are one of the so-called institutional partners of EuroDIG that are supporting the process, or have been supporting the process since the beginning. My government has been hosting, together with the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, who's another institutional partner, we have been hosting the second EuroDIG in Geneva in 2009. And we think that it is important to have a pan-European, and not just EU, but actually pan-European dialogue on internet governance with all the stakeholders from all the countries in Europe, including also this region, of course. Southeastern Europe is a very important region also for us, because there are some different challenges in this region that we should not forget in Western Europe. And so we're very happy to be here in Tbilisi. It's my fourth time in this very nice city. And it's my second time in this place after the IGF Georgia 2016 that was taking place here in September, where it was very warm. Yeah, we are supporting EuroDIG because, as I said, it's important to have this dialogue with all stakeholders on all levels, on global level with the IGF, on national level for those who have a national dialogue structure, and also on European level, because we think that we are better off if we work together, if we understand mutual challenges and exchange ideas for solutions, or for how to deal with the number of challenges that we're all facing. And also, which is something that is important, we are trying to get the European national discussions together in a way that we have a more visible voice also on a global level, which is a challenge, of course, because of the diversity that we have in Europe. And we are a number of institutional partners. Some of them are present here physically, others are present remotely. We have Adam Peake from ICANN that is sitting there. We have Marit from ISOC. The Council of Europe is participating remotely this time. Giacomo Mazzone from the EBU, who I mentioned already. Then we have Euralo, the European Region at Large Organization of ICANN, with Olivier. ETNO, the European Telecom Operators, with Christina. And the European Commission, who's also participating remotely, with Valentina. And RIPE NCC, our neutral, technical, even more than pan-European, going into Asia and other regions, or Middle East, with Chris. He can explain you everything about the technical details about how the internet and the IP protocol works. So just go to him and ask him questions. I had to say this. And so these are the institutional partners that we have, and yeah, we're very happy to be here and look forward also with all the remote participants that are with us today from all over Europe, including some from the United States, where they are today, including some subject matter experts. So we're very happy to look forward to a lively and interesting debate today. Thank you. Back to Sandra, I guess.
Thanks, Thomas. As we are a little bit late in time, I will be very quickly just explaining the process for those who don't know our program planning process yet. But first of all, I would just like to let you know this is a meeting where the presenter should not talk, but you should talk. And you see we have some microphones here, and I hope these microphones will be distributed in this room so that everyone can really contribute and raise the voice during that meeting. It shouldn't be the presenter speaking all the time. We want to discuss this program for EuroDIG and Georgia with you, and we need your input, and not just nogging, but we really need to know today how we are going to change that agenda. It's a draft program at the moment, and it will be open for comments for 2 weeks from now until 15th of February, and then we will close it, and then we will know what we are going to do in June in Georgia. But first of all, as said, I go quickly through our program planning process. With this graphic, we try to explain or try to show you how it is actually a long year process. It doesn't work. At the moment, we are here in the process. So we had to call for proposals, we drafted the program, the consolidated program will be out by February. Then we go all the way along through, we have the EuroDIG in June, then we have the reporting phase, and then we start with the next call for issues until the IGF. Unfortunately, we don't know yet when the IGF is and where it's going to take place. Our milestones: end of February, the consolidated program. In March, February, we will also start calling for org teams, because it is not the steering committee or the secretariat or the subject matter experts doing the sessions or organizing the sessions, it is the community. And everyone in the room is invited to join such an org team. They are open for everyone. And even if you did not submit a proposal, this doesn't matter. Sometimes people find out about EuroDIG later in the process, but then they realize, oh, actually, this is a topic I could contribute to. So these org teams are open until the very last minute. Even in May, people can still join such org teams. Of course, we will expect them then to catch up. And we have a tool for this. We have set up a wiki, a EuroDIG wiki, where all the information about the planning process feed into, where you have access to a mailing list for each session. And then everyone is able to get in touch with the org team and catch up. On 1st of March, we opened the registration, not only for the event, but also for the youth program, for the EuroDIG. We have a pre-event, like 2 days, where we invite young people across Europe to get up to speed and to catch up with the EuroDIG agenda, to talk about the issues that are going to be discussed. And also we have set up a travel support program now for the 3rd time. Thanks to our sponsors and contributors, we are able to invite a significant amount of people, like 30 to 40 people to Georgia. We can cover travel and accommodation costs. And this year we will have a focus to invite national and regional IGF organizers. So those who are organizing an IGF in their country will be on top of the list to be invited, because what we will do is a national and regional general assembly on the day 0 of EuroDIG. Then Siddik. Siddik is the Southeastern European Dialogue on Internet Governance, our little sister or brother, whoever you want to see it. And they are having their meeting in May already. We had a joint call for proposals, so their agenda will be somehow on the along the lines what has been given the input in the call for issues. We have Liana here from the Siddik. She is from the executive committee, and we will have later on Serena online. So this meeting, which is also a 2-day meeting, is kind of a pre-meeting to EuroDIG, and the results from this region will then feed into the EuroDIG, which this year also takes place in Southeastern Europe, but especially you're dedicating your agenda to this region in Europe. On 31st of May, we closed the registration. We have the EuroDIG. We have, I mentioned it already, pre-events on day 0, and then 2 days of EuroDIG. Okay, what we did so far with the proposals who have been submitted. We received overall 261 proposals for EuroDIG and Siddik. Most proposals have been for EuroDIG and Siddik, and a small amount for specifically for Siddik only. What we did in the EuroDIG team, we had these different categories. You will find these colors all along the process, and a legend will explain you the color of each category. Brown, for instance, is media, green is access, blue is innovation and economical issues, red is security. So we got all these submissions, and then we have subject matter experts. Some of the subject matters are with us today, others are online, and we'll talk to you later. They were looking at all the proposals and put them together in a way that it makes sense. This is quite different to what the global IGF is doing, where they are doing a call for sessions, where you have to submit a session and then you get selected or not. We are doing a different approach. We say we want to ask for proposals, what should be discussed, and then we merge them in a way that subject matter experts thinking it makes sense. So they cluster them in subtopics, and sometimes it happened that an access proposal is merged in an economy session, or a security aspect should be discussed also in an innovation session. This is on purpose because we don't want to have the same people from the same group talking to each other. We really want to facilitate a multi-stakeholder process. And we believe this can only happen when not the human rights activists stay among themselves and discuss the issues, what should be done. No, the human rights activists, they should also go to innovation or to security sessions and contribute in a way that there is really, that there are different views are coming together. Then subject matter experts will, or did recommend what could be a plenary, what could be a flash, what could be a workshop. And this is actually where we are now. We have this recommendation from the subject matter experts. And after the review of the program, of the draft program for the 2 weeks from now on, we will reconsult with subject matter experts. We will incorporate the feedback from the community. We will reallocate the proposals, and we will come up probably with a slightly different program than we have it today. And then we will open the call for org teams. The best way to get involved, or I mean with submitters, we will communicate directly because we have their email addresses, but everyone else will get all this information when subscribing to our newsletter. All the calls to action are distributed via our newsletter, but also via social media channels in order to spread the word a little bit more. Okay, now we are already at the point that I would like to invite our subject matter experts. Here you have again all the categories and the numbers of submission we received. We received. That's an old mistake, and they're making jokes of me. So those subject matter experts, some of them are here, others are online, will speak to us in a minute. Sometimes we changed the category because when a proposal was made in a category where we thought it's probably better in another category, then this was shifted. But this shows the way how the people actually choose the category and how many proposals had been submitted in each category. So, in the sake of that some people are sitting in Los Angeles and waiting to get to bed, they just stood up for us to present. We will start with the category human rights. This is done by Farzan Nebadi. She is also the NCUC chair at the moment. That's why they are having the that's why they are staying in Los Angeles today. At ICANN, they're having a GNSO. Adam, what is it actually? A GNSO meeting, gathering?
One of ICANN's complicated structures. It's the non-contracted parties house intersessional meeting. You shouldn't have asked, but that's what it is.
So Farzaneh and Tatjana, two of our subject matters, are both there. And is Farzi, she's online, I see. And Farzi, the floor is yours. If you would try to speak up, and we reconfirm that we hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much. And just a small correction. I know it is very complicated, but I have recently been elected as a non-commercial stakeholder group chair. So the NCUC chair is someone else, just correcting that so that the NCUC chair doesn't kill me. But I am the non-commercial stakeholder group chair, but I am the subject matter expert on human rights cluster for EuroDIG. I have been in that role for the past, I believe, 2-3 years. And this year we have received quite interesting proposals in human rights cluster, around 38 proposals. And so the first, obviously, is something that Europe cares about and is very passionate about, which is online privacy. But online privacy, this year, we noticed this change from talking about the problem to going to finding the solution. So we titled it, which is a working title, as Online Privacy, Old Problems, Emerging Solutions. The proposal under this topic are about how can we make privacy protection more actually transparent in products that we use on the internet and in Internet of Things. And also they talk about privacy through cryptocurrency And these proposals are not about regulation, but also about other innovative aspects of protecting privacy online. So this is one of the clusters that we considered, and quite a couple of proposals go underneath that. Then we will have the educational track on the general data protection regulation, which is if the Europeans are quite familiar with that, but this is a European Union regulation. It does have global effects, so it is not only about Europe. And a couple of workshops were about that, and we think that it is quite timely to talk about it in the educational track, how the businesses are going to deal with this, how the activists are going to use it for advancing the rights of the internet users online with regards to privacy. Then the other cluster is about laws in government versus internet rights, because what we noticed, that trend is that we always talk about how the government can help us protect our internet rights, but also there is the other side of the coin, which is how the laws and the surveillance and the governments actually impede impede the flourishing of internet rights, and how they do not protect it. Then we have a cross section between between innovation and economic issues and the human rights, which is about the artificial intelligence replacing humans. I did not come up with that very intriguing title. I guess it's a working title. So it is about how artificial intelligence is going to impact our human rights. No, I'm talking. Am I talking to myself?
You're back again. You
disappear?
for a while. Your voice was gone, but now you're back.
Okay,
Please
so
continue.
I was talking about the artificial intelligence replacing human, that section, which is workshop 8, I believe. And now I can't hear you. Oops.
Farsi?
Yeah, I'm back. I think I can just finish this within a second. So the workshop 8 is the cross section between innovation and human rights, which is about artificial intelligence and how it affects human rights, and how it also helps economic and innovation issues. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farsi. I would suggest we take up to 3 questions after each cluster, and I would like to invite the people in the room to comment or ask Farsi as long as she's here, because she will then go to bed soon and will not join us for the whole day. Are there any questions, comment on the human rights issue and clustering? Giacomo, please.
Working? Can you hear me? Ciao Farsi. I have a doubt about your proposal in which you say that the GDPR are only in the educational track, because this event will arrive after the entering in force of the GDPR. So I think that probably is not only a question of to know how it works, but it's also a question of discuss if everything has gone well. So I think that even if you distinguish the two things, the GDPR will have to be central in the online privacy old problem emerging solution. And if I may correct you, even if it's true that it's a European Union directive and regulation, this, of course, will be seen as a reference point by many countries all over the world, and for sure by all countries in Europe.
Yes, thank you very much, Giacomo. I actually mentioned that GDPR will have an effect outside of Europe. I don't know if I was clear. Of course, I am not sure about your statement that it's going to be a reference point or not. It is not a perfect law. I hope it will not be a reference point. However, it might be something that other countries use, and there's no doubt about that. And it will, as it will go into effect, it will have a global effect, not only a European Union effect. And that's at least what we hope for. The other thing that you mentioned, the educational track, GDPR will only go into effect in May. And our event, I believe, is in June. So giving them 2 months is still, we are in the educational phase. Even now that we are in ICANN is in its educational phase too, to comply with this law. So I don't think by then we are going to see much of outcome of how GDPR compliance will look like. However, we with the meeting organizers, we discussed this, and they decided to put it in educational track because the proposals substantively are about what is GDPR about, how our businesses are dealing with it, how our activists are dealing with it. So I don't see any conflict between your suggestion and this being in the educational track.
Okay, Adam is, and then I see Christina, and anyone else has a question, raise your hand now, because then I would close the queue. So Adam, you have the floor.
Try again. Yes, hi, good morning, Adam Peak, and I'm here on behalf of ICANN, thank you. Yes, similar sort of questions to Giacomo, that I think that this actually, if anything, it may even elevate itself to become a main session or a plenary session. I can't think of any issue that is larger and more important for Europe at the moment. We have the law being implemented on the 25th of May, and we're meeting however many days after that, 9 or 10. Certainly it's affecting the 47 nations of the Council of Europe who've been adopting these regulations over the past few years in their previous forms. So, you know, ICANN, as an example, is going through a very serious implementation phase, but we're only a minor part of this. It has global effects. I mean, the whole point of the regulation was really to be outward looking, in that it was trying to look at how some of the how the platform providers on the internet are using privacy and affecting data protection laws and so on. So I think this actually goes way beyond an educational track, and we're talking about a requirement to implement on May the 25th. So there may be people that are looking for ways around that so that you can implement later, but certainly you're going to have all your conditions in place by then. So I'd sort of like to see this, or we'd like to see this elevated in some way. Not that education isn't important as an aspect, but this brings in all kinds of issues of extraterritoriality and so on and so forth. So it's a big issue, and will be one that's going to be all over all kinds of news media, I think, at the time when we're meeting. So it would be a good discussion to have. Thanks.
I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to be very brief. As I said, this was not necessarily my suggestion. However, I do not see a problem with it being an educational track. Educational track, as you said, Adam, is not on its own unprivileged category. However, if you want to make it a plenary, I have to say GDPR is an old it's not, it had to be discussed like 2 years ago, not now that it's going to into effect. But of course, if the participants all agree that it should be a plenary or something that is kind of a main session without calling it educational, then I do not have any opposition to that. I wanted to make one more point about access to content. We had a couple of proposals about online content regulation, which we have spread them around in the category of access. And these are really important proposal, and online content regulation is a very timely topic, especially with all the calls for regulation for fake news and all sorts of things that are happening that can hamper our freedom of speech. So I just wanted to note that these proposals are there. They're just distributed in other categories. Thank you.
Thank you, Farzi. I might just add, because when we were drafting or putting together the recommendations from the SMEs why GDPR ended in an educational track, we believed that when drafting the program that GDPR will somehow an underlying issue in many of the sessions. Many participants, when discussing the issues, will always refer to GDPR, and we thought it might be good to summarize first. That's why you will see it later. It is also very early in the program to summarize that first, bring everyone up to speed, also those who are not so familiar with the GDPR, where the issues are, etc. And then we always had these issues that you had an underlying issue which was not maintained as a plenary or as a workshop, but it was constantly coming up in each and every session. Just for you as a background, why we put it in an educational track and not in a workshop or in a plenary. But as said, I took note of that, and that's up to the participants here in the room and to the others to decide. Christina, you have the floor, please.
Yeah. Just on online content regulation, I think I might have missed it before. I wonder if you could just develop a bit what the proposals were about that, what type of regulation?
So the proposals were about how the private platforms regulate online speech, or and they do this by self-initiation, or they are forced to do so by the government, and also especially in combating fake news, hate speech, what sort of measures can be taken and these platforms take, and what should be done, what should not be done, in order to preserve a balance between freedom of speech and also the safety and security that that we need.
Okay. There were no other questions. Farzi, thank you so much for... Sorry?
Hello. Hello. Yes, okay. Just 2 words about, I think these are probably the 2 key issues for this year. One is the GDPR. Of course, we don't have to repeat what Adam and others said. And the other cluster about content regulation, I think, is something that we will be increasingly talking about with, you know, that Germany has a law about hate speech and other, trying to somehow control or at least channel information, the whole fake news debate. And the Commission has set up this expert group that is supposed to present their results in April. So I think this is really something that we cannot ignore and should have a prominent place in the program of EuroDIG, the whole discussion about content and freedom of expression versus some kind of control or means to deal with content issues. Thank you.
Okay, Farzi, you have the last word. Anything to add from your side?
There's nothing to add. Thank you very much. I hope I helped with.
Thank you very much, Farzi, also for staying up late in the night, and have a good rest. With this, I would directly hand over to Tatjana Tropina. She's also subject matter expert for EuroDIG since about 2 or 3 years since we invented this system of subject matter experts. She's monitoring and responsible for the category security and crime. Security and crime was a focus last year. We received a lot, or the biggest amount of proposals on this issue. This year it was, although it was overall balanced, a little bit less. Tatjana, you have the floor. Please explain how you clustered security and crime.
Hi everyone, can you hear me well?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So hello to everyone from Los Angeles, and I'm really sad that I cannot be with you in the wonderful city of Tbilisi. So without any due delay, I'm going to the proposals. We received like 37 of them this year. And what I noticed from them, that many of the cyber crime and security proposals were referring to something that we already discussed in the last 2 or 3 years when I was a subject matter expert for the security and crime cluster. The only way I had to bring something new to the EuroDIG this year is to put all the proposals which were referring to cybersecurity strategies, stakeholders, trust, cooperation, because these issues were already discussed, into one cluster and to add something new to it. So these proposals were merged all together into the workshop, which is given a working title, Cybersecurity in Europe and Beyond, with a focus of norm making. There were a couple of proposals on norm making, and I think that we haven't discussed this angle, although it has been becoming more and more prominent in Europe and beyond. Again, this is a working title. It would be up to the focal point and organizing team to come up with a catchy title. So, cybersecurity in Europe with a focus of norm making. Now, the next set of proposals. Sandra, would you like me to turn on my camera if it helps, or better if?
This, I think, Tatjana, this depends on your bandwidth.
Well,
feel free to do it.
If you want to see me speaking. So the next set of proposals was referring to Internet of Things security, and I clustered them additionally, and I find these proposals very good. It was only 2 of them, but they outlined like really the current problems of security of the Internet of Things. So I put them into additional cluster, and I believe that in the category economic innovation, there were 2 proposals on the IIT as well. So they got merged, and I believe that we came to a conclusion that it would be a kind of joint session on the intersection of economic innovation and security, which will discuss not only Internet of Things as a driver for economic innovation, but also security challenges connected to it. The third cluster of proposals, which I found really interesting, and there were 2 or 3 of them, was the security of DNS. So either some narrow issues, or I think was proposal from ICANN on the public safety working group. I believe that they got merged probably with the DNS educational track, and just perceiving any possible questions, I would like to make a remark about educational tracks. For 2 or 3 years, I witnessed very interesting educational tracks which are discussing very specific technical issue. Like, for example, we had security educational track, blockchain educational track, and so on and so forth. And sometimes they're even more interesting than plenaries, because plenaries are very general. Sometimes you have too many speakers. At the educational track, people can deep dive into the issues. So I believe that we merged the security of DNS into educational track for DNS. I might be mistaken. So This is all for the workshops. We have only one standing alone cybersecurity workshop. We have workshop on the Internet of Things where security challenges would be merged. I believe that this workshop will have two colors, blue and red. And so also there were several proposals which warranted a flush. One of them is cybercrime and digital investigations proposed by Council of Europe. It wasn't standalone proposal. If there would be any more proposals referring to cybercrime, I would have suggested to make it a workshop, but I believe that Council of Europe can perfectly organize a flash session discussing cross-border challenges for digital investigations. Another standalone proposal was about reaching a small and medium enterprise on cybersecurity and challenges in this regard. And the author of this proposal came with a very developed structure and with a very particular challenges he wants to discuss, and what is more important, with the practice in this area. So I thought that this would also warrant a standalone flash without merging this proposal to anywhere. And another issue, and I believe, was it actually in my category? I believe that it was transferred from somewhere else, the role of certs in the, no, it was in my category, the role of certs in cybersecurity community. So that's basically it. It's really different from the last year where we had big cybersecurity plenary and 2 workshops and educational track. This year it was rather straightforward, like 21 proposals were just got merged into a workshop. So I'll happily accept any questions you might have, bearing in mind that it's almost 11 p.m. in LA, so don't be too harsh on me, please.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. And I must say, it's really great. You are almost like sitting in the audience with the big screen we can see here. You don't see it from your side, but for us,
I do see that I'm on a big screen, and yeah.
It's just great. It's like you would be with us here. So
I hope you don't see all my wrinkles and all this.
Okay. So also to Tatiana, 2, 3 questions. Please raise your hand. No questions.
Wow.
There is a question over there, this gentleman. Do you have a mic already?
Thank you very much, Georgi, representing the Council of Europe, more specifically Cybercrime Program Office. I don't think it's more of a question because I think that the program looks very balanced. Although I think that we would request, if it's the place to request it, another short sort of, not a workshop, but a session in the 0 day, because we usually do it in the 0 day of the EuroDIG. This year we'll be bringing about 50 participants from the Eastern Partnership and West Balkans, representing law enforcement, CERT community, security services, prosecutors, decision makers, etc. And we would like to discuss capacity building on cybercrime in terms of the projects that we do actually throughout the whole world in that session. So I have noticed that there are some free slots in the 0 days, so probably we can take one over and strengthen a little bit also the security agenda there. I tried to make it this time an open session. Last time in Estonia it was closed one, but we didn't mind the participants coming in. So in the end I think it worked well, and we'll try to make it open this time. So it will be also interesting for anyone else to come in and see what, not just Council of Europe, but what do we do as a cybercrime community in the Eastern Europe, in West Balkans, in Turkey, and beyond. So that's kind of a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Let's catch up later about this proposal. We will see Day 0 still has some slots available, so I'm sure we can include your proposal. And I do remember that last year in Tallinn we also had an Eastern Partnership meeting already. Very good. Any other comments or questions? Adam, please.
If I can make, yeah, I made the mic work. Adam again, sorry. One of the issues that we were a bit confused about is how, do we have a list which matches the workshop numbers with the actual workshop names and proposers? Because there's a couple here like security of the DNS. They weren't from ICANN, but of course we're very interested in that because that's our job. So we'd like to know who those are. And then with the enormous listing under the first topic number, apart from the challenge of merging any workshops like that, it would be interesting to know where they are. We also had a proposal which we'd like to try and fit in somewhere. It's about how the Governmental Advisory Committee is addressing security issues in ICANN and more broadly. So it would be something that we'd quite like to fit in with some other of these topics. Thanks.
Okay. First, to thank you for the question. These ideas, there is a list on our meeting page where you have, and meanwhile we included the ideas because they were missing at first, but they are there. So you can identify the ideas and look at the proposal in more detail when visiting the Excel sheet, which is PDF'd on the website, so you can look at this. Tanya, you want to answer to Adam?
I want to answer to Adam. Adam, your proposal have not got lost. So it was a standing alone issue on DNS security. And I do remember this proposal very well. I maybe should have articulated myself a bit better, but I was trying to be short and concise. So we did have this proposal about public safety working group and GAC, like what they're doing within ICANN and with multi-stakeholder model and how we can use this. So I basically propose to merge it with another DNS issue submitted by DNS security issue submitted by EuroDIG members. There were 2 members submitting the interesting proposal, which actually kind of fits, you know, your public safety working group proposal by ICANN. And I came with the idea to make a flash session out of this DNS security. But then the organizing committee, because there are not that many slots, they said that ICANN is doing educational track on DNS anyway, and this can be merged with educational track. If you insist that you want to have a standalone session on DNS security, my initial proposal was to have it. But apparently we don't have enough rooms and enough slots, so you better to free some time for this in your DNS educational track, unless EuroDIG organizing committee will decide otherwise. So, I mean, from my perspective, you can see on the screen in red, now it's in green, that DNS security was a standalone issue, but we have to merge things, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Yeah. Thanks, Tanya.
Sandra, another comment to what Georgi said. As someone who works with Council of Europe and knows how much Council of Europe does, I very much welcome this idea of the session on day 0, and I definitely will try to attend as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Just to answer or to catch up with the DNS, there is indeed an educational track organized by Center, not by ICANN, and they will do educational session first and then a follow-up workshop. So we will have quite a lot of DNS discussion into the program, and this is where these proposals also have been added to. Okay, good. Any other comments or questions to the security category? Are there some questions from remote participants or some comments? Maybe you read them out?
Hi. So we do have a comment from Mark Carvel. Discussion about addressing harmful content also needs to be handled in a balanced way with the participation of policy experts and representatives of the social media platforms, for example. So if we have something to add in a program. Tanya.
Tanya, did you get this?
Yes, I got this, but I think that it's more about what Farzi was talking about. So it's about content regulation. But I see another comment from Mark because I'm monitoring the chat. He said that regarding cross-border cooperation, it would be good to consider the outcomes of Internet and Jurisdiction conference in Ottawa. And what I can say to this, I believe that Internet and Jurisdiction project has been active in EuroDIG, so they can join the organizing team for anything, anytime, and see where they can fit. I mean, I can't imagine them being silent on this issue, not contributing. Bertrand and Paul are always there and always ready to update people. So I don't really see any issue here. If they want to be at EuroDIG and provide results, they will be there and provide results. So I think that it's absolutely fitting this. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Last call for comments or questions on the security category? If this is not the case, Tanya, do you have the last word? Anything to add from your side?
Well, I just want to thank any submitters who are joining remotely or who are in the room. Thank you very much for your interesting proposals, and I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you and seeing you all soon. Enjoy Tbilisi, and cheers from Los Angeles again.
Thank you very much, Tanya, also for staying up late.
Thank you for allowing us to go first. Thanks.
You're welcome. And we will proceed with the next remote participant, which is Zorina Teleanu, Diplo Foundation, but also Siddik ExCom member. And she was working on the category Internet governance and development of the Internet governance ecosystem. She also contributes to EuroDIG since ages, since its beginning, I would say. And she is sitting in Malta. She also cannot be with us today. Zorina, you have the floor.
Good morning, Sandra. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
And I can try to switch on my camera as well, so let's see if that works. Okay, so I will be short. The proposals submitted under my category were not that many, or better said, the one that were left under my category were not that many. Let me see if I can change the slide. Sandra, I'm not sure if you can change it or I should change it here on my screen.
What do you want to change?
The slide in WebEx, I still have the security one.
Okay,
and I cannot.
In WebEx, we have to change to the slide development of the Internet governance ecosystem. But here we have in the room we have the slide on your category.
Then I'll go ahead until someone manages to change it in WebEx as well. So we initially had about 30 proposals submitted under this cluster, development of Internet governance ecosystem. But it turned out that many of those proposals actually pertain to other categories like human rights and blockchain technologies, and I think there was also something about net neutrality. So those were moved under other categories, and they are now clustered together with other session proposals. So what was left under this category you can see now on the screen, and I'll go quickly through them. There were many proposals about basically capacity development issues in Internet governance, inclusion, diversity, language barriers, and cooperation, all these things that have been long discussed at EuroDIG and other IGF-related meetings, and are also a subject of discussion at national IGFs. And since at EuroDIG we started last year this NRI assembly, the proposal is to put all these topics into the NRI assembly to see how they are being tackled at national level, sub-regional level within Siddik, and then EuroDIG. So that would go for the NRI assembly, which is proposed for day 0 this time, for a bit more focused discussion and probably a bit longer than last year. And this was the largest number of proposals under this category. Then there were a couple of proposals about CCTLD's governance and the role of government in CCTLD governance. And those are now proposed for a flash. We think it would be interesting if someone does a bit of a small research looking a bit at how the various CCTLD registries are governed and presenting some of these models. So that would be something for a flash session. Then there was a proposal on smart governance, basically related to e-government solutions and how digital technologies are being used for public services and for improving efficiencies within e-government. So that goes also for a flash. And also a flash for our messages from Siddik. So now I'm putting my Siddik hat. Usually we have this session where we come and present the main messages from our annual meeting, in addition to also having our community members present in the various sessions with our sub-regional input. The blockchain was merged with other topics as it shows on the screen. And then there were a few proposals that were that are suggested to go under the EuroDIG program. I'm not sure if Sandra had already mentioned the EuroDIG, but it is a youth dedicated program which is held before the EuroDIG. Young people from Europe come and discuss internet governance issues. It's a bit of capacity development focused on youth. And because these proposals came from youth participants, we thought it would make sense for them to actually look a bit more into detail into them. And one was about jurisdiction, and the other one, of course, about the role of youth in IG. And this was it from this category. Happy to answer any questions or concerns you might have.
Thank you very much, Serena. And I hand over to the audience for questions and comments. Chris?
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Serena, for the update here. And my question is, I guess, less related to...
Разработчики, собственно, для понимания часто используют этот термин. То есть, если появляется некая задача, которую нужно решить, она специфическая для оператора, вот, нет необходимости...
That's not me speaking German.
Not me either.
No, what I was going to say, and because I guess it probably fits into the development of IG ecosystem, we had the EuroDIG retreat a few weeks ago, but obviously subsequent to the closing date for topic submission here. One of the things that was discussed a bit in that as a possibility was some part of the program being devoted to talking about the role of EuroDIG going forward, what EuroDIG looks like since we've reached the 10-year mark, and there perhaps would be useful to have some community discussion of what's expected and wanted out of EuroDIG, what role EuroDIG should play, how EuroDIG should fit into the global IG ecosystem. I'm presuming there weren't actually any submissions during the submission process on that. But I'm wondering, I guess, the question might be to the Secretariat, was that able to be considered for inclusion in the program, or were we regarding that as not possible for consideration since it didn't come in during the official proposal period?
Sandra, I can also say a few words, but you go first.
As I said already, we had an NRI assembly last year already, which was 1.5 hours in the main program. We considered this year that a pre-event on day 0 would be the better format, and dedicating 3 hours to that pre-event, and inviting with the travel support program, giving a focus to NRI coordinators so that travel support would not hamper them from attending EuroDIG in Georgia. So bringing them in, supporting their travel, and having this General Assembly on day 0. And what we are going to do on this General Assembly, this is not yet decided. Once the program is consolidated, we will start working with it, and institutional partners are very much invited to contribute to this session. Serena, you have something to add?
Thank you, Sandra. Just quickly, in case we won't have many people around on the day 0 to look a bit more in depth into the plans for EuroDIG going forward, just wanted to share with you that this is something that we're also looking into at Siddik, and we added this specific part as in Siddik moving forward and feeding into other processes just before our closing. So maybe this is also something we can consider, if not as an additional session, just a short subject for discussion at the closing session. But that's for, I guess, a later stage. Any other questions for me?
Yes, Marit raised and then Giacomo, and who else? Then raise your hand now. Okay, Dima.
Yes, so this is Marit from ISOC, Internet Society. I just had a very minor comment. So you have the e-government flash session there, and just to note, so in the economy and innovation cluster, we have a workshop actually on what we called something like digitizing services and European industries. So there were several proposals on digital services for citizens, including public services. So it might make sense that this will be integrated into that bigger session. Thanks.
That sounds like a good proposal. Thank you.
I have a question that is not for Sorina. Ciao, Sorina, Giacomo speaking. The question is for us, we will discuss about the date zero as a separate issue, or we are going to go to talk now? Because we have many issues that are going to date zero.
Once we are looking at the overall program, Day Zero, meanwhile, is an integral part of the EuroDIG program, and we will also look at Day Zero the same way as we look at Day 1 and Day 2.
Okay, because for instance, I think that on the NRI session, we need to have a more in-deep reflection, and I subscribe totally what was being said by Chris, that we need to have a separate moment for EuroDIG before to discuss with the national IGF.
And then the next in the queue is Steve.
Yeah. Hello, Sorina. I have a question. You can say about situation in Georgia and the Europe development of intergovernment ecosystem, simply parallel in Europe and Georgia.
I am not sure I got the question. I'm sorry. Can someone help me with this?
You can say about Georgian Europe development intergovernment ecosystem, simply parallel in Georgia and Europe.
Okay, I'm still a bit confused, but I'm guessing whatever is happening in Georgia in terms of internet governance is also being discussed at the Georgian IGF, and that would go under the NRI Assembly on Day Zero, and I hope I'm not way too off.
In this respect, I think I'm not telling too much if I say that also the Georgian IGF will probably take place on Day Zero. Ucha, do you want to say a few words about that, or did I go too far now?
Yeah, hopefully we are supposed to do it together with Day Zero and split some venue there. So yeah, we can discuss these issues on our IGF on national level, and also you can join all these meetings remotely or participate there. I'm in the Siddik platform, so I think we have a good cooperation to answer on your question with EuroDIG, also with another IG initiative, so you can join and you can participate which way do you like. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a last hand raised from Thomas. And anyone else? And I have a comment from Mark Cowell, but Thomas, you go first.
Okay, thank you. Well, one question and a comment about the national initiatives. As some of you have said, this was one of the issues that we debated quite intensely in the retreat. And I think it's very important that we try and create stronger links to the national IGF structures. And an event on Day Zero is actually a good thing. And given that the Georgian IGF is also as a national IGF that is very active and lively, I've been participating twice, we should maybe think on how to create a bridge and use maybe the Georgian IGF as a convener together with EuroDIG or something. Question is then in terms of timing, it would be unfortunate if the overlap was such that would prevent people from joining. But I think to use the fact that you have a national IGF the day before, and then somehow at the same day we have a gathering of national structures, but we need to do some more thinking on how to do this in a way that it's bringing people together and not separating them because of time overlap. And the other question, the other one is a question to Serena. As some of you may have heard, last night there were negotiations until after midnight in Geneva in the WIGEC, the working group. Adam is smiling. In the working group on enhanced cooperation, and there was no agreement at all on the future development of the IG ecosystem, if I may call it like this. And since this is part of the, or this is the title of this cluster, I do understand that there are also issues like capacity building and other issues, but let's say the core of the discussion on the future of digital cooperation or development of the IG ecosystem or whatever you call it, have there been some proposals coming in to discuss the future of the IG ecosystem, the development of the cooperation of the different actors in IG in general, or is this something that has not come in? And yeah, because I think that this is still an important issue, how to develop the cooperation with all the different actors. So I was just wondering to what extent this, let's say, procedural or governance issue has been reflected in the calls for issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. No, actually, there wasn't any proposal into this kind of issue, looking at the future and being a bit more theoretical. But I don't see any harm in trying to add this on the agenda, because in 3 hours, I think we can fit that as well, if Sandra and everyone disagrees.
Eka?
Thank you, Sandra. Hi, Serena. I have just one question. Maybe we will discuss during our national IGF during day 0 on this topic, but I want to know the international organization's opinion, and are you planning to discuss on EuroDIG sessions what is the role of the administration, of the government in CCTLD administrations? What's the role of the government on this?
Ucha, you raised your hand?
Yeah, it's a very hot topic for Georgian society because, yeah, as we know, some good recommendation from ICANN and etc. But this is a very hot topic for Georgia right now, ongoing. So maybe it will be interesting to discuss also on our IGF, but it will be great to hear all these from all these stars, their point of views and etc. On EuroDIG level. It will be very interesting and helpful for us.
I think this comes in the category technical and operational issues. I think we have proposals on that in this category. Olivier? Eka, can you pass the mic to Olivier?
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. Olivier Crépin-Leblond speaking. And I'm picking up on what the gentleman earlier mentioned, the gentleman from Georgia picked up on the parallel between Europe and Georgia. I think the gist of your point was that there needed to be a Georgian perspective on these panels, and perhaps a parallel between the way other European countries are dealing with the issues and the local issues. So perhaps when making up the panels, there should be local representative or local participants from Georgia to be able to share the local perspective as well as the European perspective.
Olivier, you mentioned a good point. Geographical balance in the session setup is very important. Subject matter experts and the Secretariat are looking at it, but we should of course need to know whom from the Georgian community can speak about which topic, and here we need the help from our Georgian friends. And we have a good network already here, so I'm sure we will have good representation on this. Adam, was this a hand raise or? Yes?
Thank you. Yeah, will there be a chance to talk about the points Thomas raised later today about, you know, the importance of discussing how we're going with this internet governance ecosystem generally, because the discussions yesterday in Geneva were very relevant. The conflict or tension between multi-stakeholder and multilateral isn't going away clearly, so this is an issue that's very hot and current, and probably for later in the day if we can, I suppose.
I think it's the right place to mention this issue here under this category, but maybe we come back to this when we are looking at the overall program, because sometimes I have the feeling it would be easier if you would have seen the program already in order to know what else is coming. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I would refer to our remote participants. Mark Cavell, I'll just read him out loud. And Mark, by the way, if you want to speak, that's also possible. Just give me a hint in the chat. Mark says, I think the Day Zero meeting of the NRIs is a very good proposal. I will relay to this to the UK IGF team. Please update us on the agenda as soon as you can, so we and others can prepare inputs. Thank you very much. And in another comment, he says, a strong EuroDIG message on primacy of multi-stakeholder governments will be desirable in the year of the ITU plenipotentiary, and especially if no host for the global IGF comes forward. I think this goes very much into the direction what Adam just said and Thomas raised. So yes, let's have a look at this and don't forget about this topic when we are looking at the overall program. So Rina, you have the last word as well. Do you have anything to add, or?
No, nothing. I will do my best to follow the rest of the meeting, but please feel free to ping me if I miss something. Thank you, everyone, and good luck with the meeting.
Thank you, Serena, for joining us. I know it's early for you. For the others, it was late. For her, it's early. So we appreciate dedicating your time very much. Thank you. Okay, then let's go now to one of the other categories where we have the subject matter expert present. And let's start now on the top with the green category, access and literacy. And here Olivier is the subject matter expert. Olivier, the floor is yours. And you know what? You're a good moderator. I just give you the mic.
Thank you very much, Sandra. And I'll ask myself to be brief. So be brief, please, Olivier. Olivier Crépin-Leblond speaking. So I'm dealing with the access and literacy part of the overall call for topics. There were 30 suggestions this year, which is more than any other year before. I think it's the same with all of the submissions, actually. There were a lot more submissions than in previous years. We saw some submissions being quite similar to previous years, and so I clustered them in, I would say, a similar number of groups. One was the access in the community. We had, I think, one of the larger amounts of submissions. The second one was access and literacy in the community. That's the same as access in the community, but with an emphasis, an increased emphasis on actually also explaining and teaching people how to use the internet or how to be involved in internet governance. Third was about literacy, so completely pushing aside the access part, and that was the largest number of subject topics. Then there was a single item on child protection online, which I felt was probably more suited to content and perhaps media, but we have had such things in the past. Then literacy in the business online. I think there's a difference between general literacy on how to use the internet and also teaching businesses how to use the internet effectively for e-commerce and so on. And certainly in Georgia, that would probably be a very interesting thing to move forward. And then finally, access to content. And that is interesting because one keeps on talking about network neutrality, but access to content is with having these sort of single search engines that everyone. Looking at the actual topics, the one that struck me as being the really the one that falls very much in line with what's been happening locally is access in the community. Some of you, or I think most of you, might be aware of the Tusheti project, where Ucha Satori and his team managed to bring internet connectivity to some remote part of the mountains in the country. Difficult to reach, but at the same time, very few communications, no email, no internet, telephone system that's very difficult to get to work. And they managed to do something in a way as community networking. And there's been a lot of discussion about community networking elsewhere in the world in the light of the network neutrality discussions that have taken place in the US, where Trump's administration have renegated the whole idea about network neutrality, and some parts of the United States being difficult to reach through more than one provider. So you end up in a monopolistic situation. So renewed debate about connectivity and about community networks, quite a few proposals there, and so it felt quite normal to have a plenary on this in Georgia, with the start being a description of about the Tusheti project, and then having an actual discussion across the whole scope of European countries, but also abroad, and also bringing the Georgian input on this. So that was the first one that we felt was very important. On the other topics, if I can go back one, there was a lot of emphasis again on generational gaps, you know, the digital natives, the digital migrants. And I think in the past we've often focused on youth, but we have not quite focused on people that are senior age. I think I'm certainly reaching soon that level, and people that effectively feel completely outside the whole revolution that the internet has brought forward. Yes, Adam, that includes you. Still not using the internet, and so because there were several proposals on that, we felt maybe it would be good to have this as a day zero event and call it "Don't Forget Silver Surfers," digital inclusion and literacy focused on seniors, and there are quite a few proposals that came along with that. So that is proposed as a day zero event, which effectively is starting to make the EuroDIG an event that starts stretching a bit more. It might be. It used to be 3 days, or well, it started one day, wasn't it, first? Always 2 days? Okay, so 2 days and now it might be 3. So just wait another 5 years and it'll be about 10 days of EuroDIG. People will be sick by the end of the EuroDIG. So that's the second one. And the third one was, because of course we have to share with all of the other topics out there, the third one was seen as being potential for a workshop, and that's to do with the platform and data neutrality. And that has to do effectively with access to content and with the current monopolies that we're seeing in the GAFAs, you know, the Google, Amazon, Facebook, and what was the last A again? And not Apple. That's right, Apple, yeah. Well, Apple is maybe on the side, but as far as content is concerned, there's been renewed discussion going on. I don't know if anybody of you have heard about the recent points that George Soros has shared a bit at the WEF, at the World Economic Forum in Davos. It was a little bit provocative, saying that these companies are doomed effectively in the long term. No idea whether he's correct or wrong. History will tell. But certainly there is now increased focus on the fact that there are a number of monopolies establishing themselves around the world on specific topics. And so there's concern from some about it. Of course, the market decides, you know, who uses other search engines than Google in the room? Okay, not a single hand. So who uses Google? Okay, yeah, okay, so people are not asleep. Okay, yeah, no, all the hands, for the record, all the hands went up, so there you go. Because we like it, because it works. And so that seems to be an interesting discussion that we haven't had at EuroDIG before, and that is going to come increasingly important in Europe as European Commission and so on are focusing on these issues. I think that's all I can talk about at the moment. I'm really open to questions. We certainly have one more thing regarding youth. We, of course, haven't forgotten about youth. And so empowering vulnerable youth communities through capacity building on internet governance, you'll see on the last column, is one topic that we will be covering at EuroDIG. And just reminding to you, EuroDIG takes place just before EuroDIG as well, and it will just be across. Likely, let's cross fingers, it might be just across the street from EuroDIG. So I really hope that participants will be able to come in and out and go and see the youth that we put across the street. They're not that bad. They're okay, you know, they're very nice. Any questions? I have to ask any questions, of course, I've got the mic. Any comments? Anybody wants to fire me or double my salary, which is 0 at the moment?
Thank you very much. But of course, access to the content is very important topic and interesting topic for all of us, but my question is regarding the copyright protection of the copyright infringement, because for example during the e-commerce process, what is the liabilities of the intermediary service providers, telecom operators, to protect the copyright infringement? This is the question.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's Olivier speaking. I think, is this covered in content maybe? That would be in the other. Yeah, Marit. So that's not my direct department. Sorry. Go next door, fill the form, and then go next door, and then they will contact you. Let's bring a bit of bureaucracy to EuroDIG. Yeah, always good. Anybody else has a ticket to? Yes, Giacomo.
It's about the workshop on platform and data neutrality.
Content neutrality.
I think that the definition need to be made a little bit clear, because there are a lot of confusion about what is data neutrality, what is platform neutrality, etc., etc. Are you extracting something, a synthesis of the all proposals in order to be clear, or?
Yeah, well, we had actually both proposals. So platform neutrality was actually given as a proposal for a topic, and content neutrality as well. They're not exactly the same thing.
No, they are very different.
But that might be actually one of the things that we would need to address, that both of them, I mean, do you think that both of them could be addressed in the same?
Yes.
Because for some people, it's the same thing. For others, it is very different. And as we know, it can be indeed very different. But the overall topic is, let's talk about neutrality of the net without actually focusing on network neutrality, which I think is something we've discussed over and over again. We even had a lovely session where we wanted to write something, was it in Sofia? Very successful time where Frédéric lost a couple of pounds of sweat during the session due to the pressure going on in the room. But yeah, that's a good point. I think that if you'd like to be part of the organizing team for this, because that's something that will then be done in the next stage when an organizing team comes together to put together that workshop.
For sure, we have people at the EBU dealing with that very in deep, so we can contribute. But in the meantime, I suggest that we put a question mark, because it's an open question. We are not addressing both issues prevailing one or the other. So if we had the question mark in the title, would be good.
Okay, do you want the question mark in square brackets?
No.
Sorry, that's a United Nations joke.
In parentheses of the equation, yeah.
We'll have a question mark. We'll take note, thanks. Any other questions or comments? I don't know if there are any comments online. Anybody? Yeah, Liana.
Hello, this is Liana Galston speaking from Armenia, IGF and Siddik. So just a comment, not a question, about the access literacy and in the community, access and tools. This should be very interesting to give the literacy in using the tools, especially if we're speaking about the access, giving access to those regions which did not use internet. But now when they are connecting, they need to know how to use the tools to be connected as well. And this is in some linkages with the security as well. And another comment is having the same issue, but with the, as you said, silver surfers. Thus, we did not need to forget about them as well. For example, I thought that my father did not use internet simply because he does not know these tools, how to surf there. So this would be very good to teach people, to give them literacy in this aspect. So thank you for including this in the EuroDIG program.
Yeah, thanks for this, Liana. Sandra, it says actually access and literacy was merged with other subtopics. Yeah. Which one was the... Because it's the secretariat that then merged it across the different streams.
This was one of the examples I mentioned also with human rights. Many proposals went into the direction that people need to know how to use the internet, either young people or not connected people or older people and so on and so forth. And we believed, because we discussed access and literacy as a separate issue, I think since the past 3 years in workshops, Marit was, as the access expert, always a focal point for this. And we believed it's time that we add those voices of those people to all the other sessions. So for instance, when we are discussing literacy in online, in doing business, that we also have those people who have an expertise on literacy to add them to the other sessions. We believe it contributes more to the other session than if we would put them in one basket and let them discuss among themselves. We did it in the past extensively, so we believe this time rather add these voices. So many of those proposals have been distributed to other sessions, but one standalone session remains, concentrated, as Olivier mentioned already, on the silver servers, and we try to set up a pre-event on this, gathering other projects across Europe and bringing them together. Now that I have the mic, I would use that opportunity to read out what our online participants say. We have Elisabeth Schauermann. She was a EuroDIG participant last year and was the focal point for the young people on human rights. She's just said, I'm very much looking forward to EuroDIG. I think it's great that topical suggestions across subject matter experts are included already in its planning. It's a really good capacity building exercise. This is the second year that we do the EuroDIG under this name at EuroDIG. Last year we invited subject matter experts to give an overview on the categories, and this year we probably work more along the suggestions that have been made in the call for proposals. And then we have Mark. Mark says, yes, I agree also, but hope there will be young speakers and moderators in the EuroDIG sessions and that they can also feed the views and ideas across from EuroDIG sessions. Absolutely, Mark, this is actually the aim of the EuroDIG, that we bring them up to speeds, and this is not their way to contribute. We don't know yet, but whoever is listening from the young people, everyone and even young people are invited to join the org teams and also take up responsibility in organizing, moderating or reporting on a session. And when we are discussing use, just to let you know, we are defining use under the Council of Europe definition, which includes people up to 30 years. I hope I'm not mistaken, 28 or 30 years. That's what we consider use. And yeah, Elisabeth mentions that goes in the same direction to include the young people in the program. Oliver, I give back to you.
There is electricity here. Just in closing, it's Olivier Crépin-Leblanc speaking. Just in closing, I wanted to just point one thing out about the subject matter experts. I mean, we're not the people that will choose what goes on next in the workshops and so on. All we've done here is just to do clustering across the topics. Beyond that, the work of the subject matter expert is to make sure that the sessions are geographically balanced, that the panels are geographically balanced, that they are also gender balanced, and that they follow the EuroDIG principles. The main EuroDIG principles being you're not going to have a panel of 10 people. The whole thing has to be a discussion between the audience and the people on the stage. And so with 10 people, you'll have absolutely no chance of engaging the audience at all. So we do keep track of this. However, on this EuroDIG, we'll also have to keep a further track exactly on what Sandra was mentioning with regards to merging specific issues with in other panels and in other discussions. So for example, human rights. We are not having a workshop on human rights because it's absolutely impossible to find someone who's going to stand up and say, I am against human rights. So obviously at that point, you'd just have a session, an echo chamber of everyone going like, oh, we all agree with each other after 5 minutes. And you'd think, okay, what do we do now? It's the same sort of thing again here with access and literacy in the community. Everyone knows that we need to provide access and literacy in the community, and literacy is super important. There's so many people that just use the net because they just know how to use Facebook and that's it. And they just are not able to use the internet to its full potential. In other places, people have no understanding or concept of what the internet is capable of doing for them, whether in their private life or in their personal life or their business environment. So, but this we have discussed in the past, and so if it's just saying, oh, this is what we need to do, well, we've discussed this last year and the year before, it's time for action. But at the same time, it's time for actioning this with other topics that are being discussed. And making sure we've got a component of that in the other topics is the work of, in the other workshops, is the work of the subject matter experts. So I would call upon my colleagues, SMEs, if they could make sure that these issues which are tagged as merged with other topics will have at least some person or some angle in the other workshops, and will have some say into it. I think I've spoken enough now. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments on this category? Because otherwise I would go to the next subject matter expert, which is just next to Olivier. Could you pass the mic to Uriyu Lensipuro? He is our media expert. And Uriyu, you have the floor, please. Oh, sorry. This looks brown. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah. My name is Yrjö Länsipuro from ISOC Finland. The media and content has been with the EuroDIG for a long time as a category. Not in the first one, but then more or less every EuroDIG ever since. And of course, it's all about the digital revolution and how it has affected media and content. It started with a fairly optimistic note, because even the traditional media welcomed the social media, that now there is an opportunity for the audience to talk back. But unfortunately, it has been going into a more pessimistic directions ever since. First, we started worrying about the economic effects and the social media competing with traditional media, and you see on all statistics another negative phenomenon on the social media. In news. Now, this year, when we got in the proposals on media and content, the tendency was quite clear. I mean, we had the majority of the proposals were about fake news and how to fight it. I mean, remarkably, almost in every proposal, somehow this fighting and debunking and all these words came out. So that it was fairly easy to make the clustering. We call it remedies to the social media ills. And remedies, of course, we talk about fact-checking, we talk about legislative measures and so on and so forth. And I think that there were many different ideas in these proposals, and I think that it's going to be a good session, the plenary session. There was another cluster which many of these items could have been also in the remedies to social ills, but anyway, which we called freedom of expression versus regulation. And here we talk mainly about measures that have been planned or have been taken in order to counter these various problems of fake news and so on and so forth. But then here in this workshop, the idea is to put them, against the principles of expression, freedom of expression, and try to discuss what kind of principles should be there to establish this balance. There's a flash session. There were a few proposals, especially about the political uses of social media and online propaganda. And we have seen, of course, all sorts of examples of that this last year. That's going to be a flash session. And another flash session, standalone, is the right to be forgotten, which was also part of, I think, the Brussels EuroDIG. Finally, there was a fairly clear cluster of proposals that were about copyright reform, and also trying to make balance between consumers, prosumers. I mean, what kind of material you can use when you put things together from a sort of consumer-producer basis. So this is basically the setup for the media and content. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thanks, Uche speaking. My question is related to push somehow. Georgia is a democracy country, and the region also democracy is quite new. So my question is related, what do you think about to organize maybe workshop, maybe, I don't know, maybe flash, about self-regulation. Self-regulation is something between of freedom of expression and the regulation. What do you think about that, to push and discuss this issue on the EuroDIG?
Yeah, thank you for the idea. That's perhaps we can then take a look at it and try to. I'll talk to you about that later. Yes.
So sorry, can you hear me? This is Christina from Ethno. Just a question on the copyright session. Is that more about prosumers or consumers producing their own goods and the copyright for that? Because ETNO is quite engaged right now in the discussion of the revision of the copyright directive in the EU, especially when it comes to ancillary copyright, but also the value gap. And I know this is a topic which we think will definitely define copyright in the next year. So if there's a possibility to merge, we would also be interesting to discuss those issues.
I think that some of these proposals were very much about this.
Hi, Livia from Switzerland. It's not really a question, it's rather a comment on the plenary session on remedies to the social media ills. I think that's a very important topic, and I just wanted to add the thought that perhaps there are also overlappings with literacy, because I think one remedy would be literacy, particular critical digital literacy. So perhaps, one can also look at the overlappings there and perhaps bed into this plenary session also the other discussions on literacy.
Absolutely. Of course, media literature, that's one of the remedies, really, one of the basic remedies. But I think that this is, we have it everywhere. I mean, many of the topics could be in this category or that category. I mean, it's because things sort of relate to others, and any clustering and any categorizing is a little bit arbitrary thing. And also, I think that we cannot avoid a certain amount of duplication. That is to say, probably media literature will be talked about at various sessions.
Can I? Hello, my name is Levan. I'm from Georgia, Georgian ISOC chapter board member. My question is about connectivity of two clusters like media and content and human rights, because we have the right to be forgotten and rights in the internet. So these are very interconnected issues, especially in Georgia, because it's a topic of access to information, online data protection, and freedom of expression. So how you see these two topics are not, should be in different clusters, or maybe we can unite it in this regarding media content issues as well?
Well, I would say the same as I just said the previous question. That is to say that it's these things we deal with are so interrelated and interconnected that it's practically impossible to avoid certain overlapping and certain duplication. But I don't think that it's a bad thing, because not every participant goes to every session, and so that these get covered. For instance, this the nexus between human rights and the media gets covered in several sessions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jacob.
Thank you. Of course, we volunteer for participating to the organization of the plenary. By the way, SM usually is the abbreviation for sadomaso in psychological books. Is an express you did on purpose? Okay, that's good. It's good to know.
It is a bit of that, or isn't it?
Yeah. This is what I thought. About the copyright, because it's in date zero, I think that could be interesting, and when we will come back to the date zero, would be useful to discuss there, that we create a bridge with the EuroDIG meeting, because, but we can discuss better later. I've seen that there are a lot of wrong ideas about the copyright in the youth. It was very clearly emerged during last year's session, and I think that will be good if we have this proximity that at a certain point we create a bridge between the two things.
Yes.
Maybe I can just add to what Giacomo just said. We put the copyright on purpose into the day zero because last year we had two youth tracks. One was EuroDIG and the other one was the Copy Fighters, which was a program supported by the Council of Europe and organized by the Young Pirates. And this project is finished by now, but we thought it might be a good idea if they continue from this project to presenting kind of results. I know they are in the process of forming a kind of steering committee in order to bring this project forward, and we thought we might give them some more space than in the normal program, maybe to meet with their steering committee and then submit the results from the Copy Fighter project, which was part of our youth pre-events last year, to transform it to this year's EuroDIG. So that's the reason why they at the moment are placed on day zero, but also this is subject to discussion if they will remain there or not. Yeah, Giacomo, you're right, they are not in parallel. The EuroDIG is on 2 days before and they are on day zero, so they can be made easily track on the EuroDIG program. That was the idea behind. Sorry if I expressed myself wrong.
Thank you, Sandra. Just a quick reference to the remark that I made earlier in the human rights section. Of course, the issue of media content control, social media, fake news, quality of media, of journalism, and so on. There's an overlap here, so I don't know to what extent what is planned and in which part of the cluster, but of course that may also fit in here. Thank you.
Okay, are we happy with this section?
Okay.
Somebody that we can talk in this session about the results of the high-level group, because the high-level group will produce the results at the end of April. So.
Yeah, in fact, we have one proposal where I think Paolo Cesarino has been mentioned. So I think that he's going to be a resource person.
I think the audience didn't really get what the discussion was now. Giacomo, maybe you take the mic again, and because I think it's important.
No, I was just saying, remembering to Yurio, because he's leading this process, that because we will be 1 month after the conclusion of the high-level group of the European Union on fake news, that is expected to produce recommendation for the Commission to be implemented. I think that we need to have them reporting in this plenary session, because we will be in the middle of the discussion in the European institutions.
Okay, I think we are done with media. Thank you, Uriyo, very much. Uriyo is with us for the whole day, so when the discussion comes back to media, he can answer on this. So the next is, and I think even the last, right? No, not the last, sorry, Marit. The next is Chris Buckridge from RIPE NCC. He is always looking at the category technical and operational issues. Chris, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Yeah, the technical and operational issues, we had around 20 submissions this year, which is, I think, a few more than previous years. But I think there has certainly been a lot of overlap with different other topics as well, and so we've seen a few of those, and you can see here siphoned off into merging with other topics and elsewhere, and so that's good. I think a couple of things that we did certainly see was some focus on new technologies, so whether that's AI or blockchain, and I think that's something it's good to see reflected in the program now. there's also obviously some interest in the DNS, and I think particularly given that we're having this event in Georgia, there's certainly some interest in internationalized domains, and so you can see there's a couple of workshops now on the DNS, and then also an educational track that is the one that is traditional now in the EuroDIG program. I think we have Centre working and has worked for a number of years on doing that, and they've again expressed their interest in doing something which builds on that. And so we see that they're streaming then into a workshop on DNS, what breaks it. That's the security aspect. I think that's also useful. What we've ended up then with is a number of these flash sessions which are sort of more specific in their intent and didn't really fit with any of the others. Numbering policies in the RIRs and ICANN, or numbering policies and how they what are reflected in RIRs and ICANN, I think will certainly be a flash, and that's something the RIP NCC will be happy to contribute to, though this wasn't a proposal that came from us. I believe it came from an academic sector, but I think makes sense. IXPs, there's certainly a lot of interest in that topic in this part of the world, but also in Southeast Europe. I think there's a number of stakeholders have been very interested in the development of IXPs recently, so that will be quite a useful flash topic to have. And then that next generation internet is a topic that the European Commission have been very interested in recently. There's actually a study that they've commissioned which is currently ongoing. And I think the proposal certainly came from the people involved in that study, and so I think that will also be a useful flash. The net neutrality flash session is obviously merged with other net neutrality topics, which will go into a flash. And then that day zero, the Tushetti project is looking at access and access in remote areas. So I think that's something that does make a lot of sense to do as day zero, a workshop, but also sort of a look at sort of best practices and presentation of work that's going on in that space. So yeah, I think there's not a huge amount more to say about that, but if anyone has questions or comments on this.
ICANN submitted sorry, it's Adam again. ICANN submitted a proposal on IDNs and universal acceptance, which is 203, which isn't listed.
Oh,
other than that, it's a thing of beauty. Thank you.
I would assume it fits into the workshop on IDN's general universal acceptance.
It's about universal acceptance, yeah, which would be.
So it's not listed
not
there on that.
Yeah, it's just not the
thing,
number's not that. That's all.
Sorry.
203.
We can safely assume that it's assumed to be in there, and I guess Sandra's taking a note of that.
I just had a clarification question on the Tushetti project. So I don't actually remember what kind of submission that was, but is the purpose to be some kind of like more like an educational session on community networks, how to because this is the operational issue, so how to build your own community network, or what was the background there?
The topic that I had, the proposal that I saw was actually pretty Spartan. It just says best technologies for connecting remote mountainous regions, and the proposer is from the Tushetti Development Fund. Possibly the Secretariat knows a little bit more about this and why it was given. Oh, Olivier.
Yeah, thanks. No, I don't want to use this one. I want to use this one. Yeah, thanks, Sergio. Sorry, Olivier Crépin-Leblanc speaking. Yeah, it mentions the exhibition. So during the last IGF, there was an exhibition with all of the pictures and so on from the Tushetti project, and I believe that that will be made available. The discussion or the presentation of the Tushetti project will actually be in a flash session on the first day of EuroDIG, just before we have the discussion about community networks. So there's going to be another session on the Tushetti project, as far as I understand, if that's correct, Sandra?
Yeah, because that was my understanding too, that it would be on the first day, a little presentation, and also the exhibition, to my understanding, if we would do it, it would be something that would be ideally during the whole event, maybe at the lobby of the hotel or something like that, rather than just on
Correct, yeah.
day one.
Absolutely, I can confirm that's the plan.
The net neutrality, the angle, let me have a quick look on my file here. Again, it was a pretty bare one. It was a comparison of new USA regulation and EU regulation.
There were two other net neutrality proposals under economic and innovation, which will be the next one. So they are all merged together, I think. But they were very basic in the other section, just net neutrality, impact of EU net neutrality regulation. That was the angle, because the policy debate, I suppose, in Europe is done. I don't know. I think it was Flash also under economic and innovation. Maybe we can discuss it.
Okay, that might be all from me.
Any other questions or comments on this category? I was just looking for the proposal Adam mentioned. This proposal is not in the EuroDIG agenda because it was particularly mentioned for the Siddik program and not for the EuroDIG program, but I think as we are in a region where IDN plays a role, I think it makes sense to include that here too. Adam is not in the room yet, but Ucha?
Just suggestion or question. Could we raise awareness about IPv6, because its use of this IPv6 is quite low in the region, exactly in Georgia. Is it possible to organize some session or maybe for day zero? I don't know. But it will be very important, economics and all issues related with IPv6.
So there was a proposal that came in regarding IPv6, but it was only for the Siddik event. As I say, RIPE NCC wasn't involved in the proposal regarding numbering policies at RIR and ICANN, but we will certainly take part in developing that into a useful Flash, and we'll certainly talk about IPv6 in that. In terms of what you were saying, Sandra, about and Adam's comment about the proposal which was only put in for Siddik, I think the only difference it would make is that I can be part of the organising team for that workshop, and I assume they will be. So.
Olivier Crepin speaking. Might it be interesting to have a Flash session on IPv6? That's quick, that's fast, but that's also, I mean, we've seen Flash sessions being very well attended in the previous EuroDIG, so it's a short thing and it's kind of snappy. Might be something to add.
Again, the proposal that's there for that session on RIR and ICANN numbering policies, that what you see there is essentially what was received. So there's not a lot of definition as to what it would be about. Yeah, so we can certainly maybe steer it towards that. I'm not sure how useful it would be to have that plus another on IPv6, but yeah. Yeah, but maybe, yeah.
I have a question from Mark Havel. He's asking, did Chris say there will be an update on ICANN policy discussion on the next opportunity for new GTLDs? I think this is not what you said.
No,
right?
I don't think that was, that wasn't certainly something that came in from as one of our proposals to me, I don't think, but although I could be wrong about that. But I presume it would also have been included into the DNS discussion there.
Yeah. We do have a session on, when we look at the program later on IDN and all these things. So maybe I can include this also in the traditional flash session that they are proposing, organizing.
So yeah, it is merged into currently the GLD's Universal 138. What did
Sorry, I haven't been able to correspond the numbers to the workshop, so I didn't know that 138 was that session until no, I don't think it really fits. It's about, so it wouldn't be about how they're operating now, it's more about the procedures for, subsequent procedures, which is an ongoing discussion now about what new GTLDs may look like, the discussions about geographic names, which people are very excited about at the moment, issues like that, whether there should be or should not be new GTLD rounds, issues particularly that we've seen, well, as I said, geographic names, but also trademarks, advantages of the program, disadvantages, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of issues around cybersecurity, so I don't know where the workshop fits or whether you want it, but certainly I don't think it fits quite with there. The other program on universal acceptance does fit there because it's on universal acceptance.
Usually in the program ICANN has a slot and a flash session, and I think it's finally up to you how you're going to using it, and if there is a demand to get an update on the next round of new GTLDs, then we will probably find out about this.
Yeah, I would just agree. I think if it's not going to fit into one of the workshop sessions that are already there in this thing, then I think a flash would be the most appropriate session because it is pretty specific ICANN related stuff. I don't think it sort of makes sense as a larger session in that context.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments for Chris on the category technical and operational issues? No? If this is not the case, then I hand over to Marit directly. Marit is from ISOC, and ISOC, Frederick Donk and Marit together were looking at the category innovation and economic issues, and this was the category with the most proposals this year.
Yeah, I think
which is a good sign because in our strategy it is marked that we would like to do our best to get the business sector better involved into not only EuroDIG but also the IGF and the internet governance discussion as such, because this is for ages the least represented sector, and without business on the table the whole concept becomes obsolete. So therefore we put a lot of emphasis into this, and as we are cooperating with the Ministry of Economics and the coordinator is telecom and small and medium telecom operators, I think we are in Georgia, we are in good hands. Marit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. So I think all in all there were 42 proposals, which was, as Sandra said, the largest category. Now, because the topic is quite wide, innovation and economic issues, there were all kinds of proposals, and we did have some challenges in trying to pull them into meaningful slots. As you can see, we have two plenary sessions in the draft agenda here. And the first one we called Data Economy and Growth in Europe. So there were a lot of proposals around internet economy and also linked to data. So we have big data, open data, and I think also going back to the previous discussion on GDPR, of course the GDPR is a kind of solid basis for data economy and so on. So I would see that all these issues tie in together in this data economy session. And I think also this is a session that will probably be interesting here in Georgia for the ministry and for the local stakeholders. The second plenary and the topic that had a lot of proposals was blockchain and cryptocurrencies, which of course, as we know, is a very hot topic at the moment. Also from last year's experience in Tallinn, the blockchain educational session was very, very successful, totally overbooked. So it's not a surprise. And this plenary in the agenda, as you will see, was put as the last plenary. So we hope that this would, of course, attract a lot of curious people. Then we had a couple of workshops, so IoT security, and we decided that there was also many proposals on artificial intelligence, so that this would be a kind of sequence as artificial intelligence builds up on largely, well, not largely, but is linked to IoT rather closely. And IoT, although it says on this slide IoT security, it wouldn't only be about IoT security, it would be really looking at the IoT opportunity, if you like, as a kind of holistic thing. So IoT as a kind of economic opportunity, but also then looking at the privacy and security implications that are of course interlinked. We also said that in the artificial intelligence, that's closely linked to human rights as, of course, the ethics part and also liability. These are the two things that haven't yet been solved in the artificial intelligence discussions. So Farsi will be then working with us on this session. Then we had another workshop on what we called, and this is simply a working title, so digitizing European industries and citizen services. So there were quite a lot of proposals, and especially actually coming from this region, so even Georgia, and then also Southeastern Europe, about using the internet as a platform for industries, and there were even some industries mentioned like agriculture, and also a lot of proposals around citizen services, so digitizing services, public services, cross-border services. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it might be an interesting discussion for this region to have, as there was a lot of interest. So we will leave it to the organization team, I suppose, to fine-tune the topic and find the right angle for the discussion. I see that we also have the educational track still on blockchain, so I think it's worth the effort as there is probably, as a topic, is still a new topic. And then we had several kind of standalone topics that have been here put under the flash sessions. And here we have the net neutrality that we already discussed on the last cluster. We had a few proposals on green digital environment, which was something that already featured on the agenda last year in Tallinn. Then we had a couple of proposals that we weren't quite sure about the exact scope. So digital labor and platform corporatism, and then this Picasso project. So I think we'll have to go back to the project submitters to see a bit how they can fit in, or whether they should be merged into some of the other workshops. And finally, there's the app economy, which I think also Edno submitted on that, which is a great thing. So that would be another flash. So I think that's my initial notes. I don't know if you have any questions. Levan, please.
Thanks, Marit. Just one question. Under the blockchain technologies, we also think that it will be discussions about cryptocurrency, because it's very emerging topic, especially in Georgia.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very important.
So actually, most of the proposals, they link the two topics together. It just doesn't appear on this working title, but in most proposals, actually, it was blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So it is very much included in the substance. And I think it's up to the org team then to find the right balance and the fine-tune the topic. Michael?
I have a suggestion rather than a question. I can see that day 0 is blank still. And my suggestion would be to bring people during the day 0 to this location to give the SMEs, which are located here, in the opportunity to show their projects and things. Could this be a good idea?
Question to you, Michael. Do you think to give them a session slot so that they can discuss among each other, or rather give them the opportunity to present and...
No, drive them here by bus and show them the location and give the small and medium industry people here the idea to discuss with those people who are interested.
I take note of that to include SMEs in day zero. I think that's a good idea. You will see later when we look at the program that we have also a newcomers track, so maybe we can interlink that because many SMEs will be apparently newcomers to EuroDIG. There is over there, and then also Olivier raised his hand, right? I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
So we have a request. I'm a clear representative of one of the telecom operators of Georgia, which is in a transformation process from telecom to digital company. So we have a little request, if it's possible, to have a subtopic regarding cross-border data flows, because we are also a member of a big international group, and this is very important for us to add it to this topic for in data economy.
Was it international data laws, you said? Data
flow.
Data flow, yes. So I think that really probably fits best to the plenary session. I don't know how much detail, the plenary will go into, but of course within the European Union they have the data rules, and I think it's an interesting angle actually, because Georgia is outside the European Union, to see then how we can make sure that the surrounding neighborhood regions are well integrated into the data economy, in the European data economy. So I would see it fitting in there. And it would be, I think, interesting to have of course, we would have a Georgian speaker, ideally in that session, who could bring up these perspectives.
Hello. Yeah, Olivier speaking. So it's interesting, digitizing European industries and citizen services is very much in line with the topic that was suggested in access and literacy for businesses. So I urge those people that have suggested access and literacy for businesses to look at this this topic and get involved with the organizing team for the workshop, because it's very much in line. That's how we moved from one subtopic to another subtopic.
I think it's an excellent idea, and I think also the SME idea, I very much agree that that's a very interesting angle. I can't now from the top of my head remember if there was specific proposals on the small and medium-sized enterprises, but also this topic, the workshop could take this kind of perspective and angle and include the literacy and the skills, as you say.
Maybe I can add to that discussion. I have in mind there was a proposal for small and medium enterprises. This proposal was made under the category security and crime, and it was called best practice in the approach of and reaching out to SMEs, small and medium enterprises, digital security. And this was a proposal which came from the Netherlands on a very concrete project, and we have assigned them as a flash session, and I hope that this flash will come to life, and maybe if
Yeah. Do you hear me? Yes, Christina from Etno here again. So we did submit proposals for the data economy and growth in Europe, and from our perspective, this is very much linked to trust in the digital economy and data protection, which is something our companies are working a lot with now. So I think from our perspective, it would be interesting to also have the link to the discussions we had before on data protection and what's going on, for example, in Europe on the GDPR right now, but also the e-privacy regulation.
Yeah, we discussed this actually in the preparatory phase, and I'm sure it will come up in the discussion. I wouldn't want to limit it to that because the range of proposals was quite wide. And also, as you know, in the EU now they have the separate package for the non-personal data flows. So there is also the clear business aspect of how do we use the kind of non-personal data. So not only to make it about privacy, etc. But I do think it's an underlying building block, of course. And the good news was that many of the proposals in this area came from industry. So I think Beyond, so former Wimpel also had 2 proposals in this area. So there's a lot of industry interest. So I think it would be very interesting to have also industry having a significant role in the discussion.
So it's not a question, it's maybe more suggestion. My name is Natalia. I come from the e-government agency of Georgia, and I think that it would be relevant here if we can speak a Georgian case about digitalization of services and citizen centricity of e-government services. Benefit of businesses and citizens, if it will fit in this session.
Yes, so I think, and we kind of recognize that the digitizing European industries and citizen services, so it's not directly a policy topic. Yes, there are policy implications, etc. So it would be more of a practical session. And I think maybe Georgia should take the lead, or the region, because that's where most of the proposals came from. So I think it's up to the organization team then to find the right angles and make it happen.
I'd be keen to do that.
Well, that's great. That's great.
And again, actually, it's very good that you remind us again, this is Georgia, so we need that geographical element, that diversity element. And so, of course, when we mention Europe, we always mention Europe and have to make that comparison with what's going on in Georgia. I think it's a real opportunity for us.
We have a comment from Mark Cavell, a suggestion, I would say. He is suggesting or adding to this discussion, there could be an overlap between artificial intelligence, future of work, and digitizing industries. And maybe he is proposing separate out citizen services and digital government services into another one, and not combining it with industry, and rather combining industry with artificial intelligence. Slash transforming governments, yeah, and I mean, so this is just his proposal in this respect, because now we put industry and citizen together, and he says maybe industry goes rather to artificial intelligence and separate the digital citizens and governments.
Yeah, yeah. I think what we saw was that the proposals, the way they were kind of written, it was more about using the internet as a platform for services, whether it's in the area of industry or citizen services vis-a-vis government. So that's why we kind of pulled them together. But yeah, I mean, I think in the artificial intelligence proposal, as it's written at the moment, future work is already, of course, included there. So the kind of robotics, etc., is embedded in the proposal as it is.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm representing Youth and Environment Europe. I'm from Georgia. My name is Katie. And maybe I have a really basic questions, but what I don't understand from here, there is a flash session. I don't know what it means, how it organized. And another thing I see, there is a EuroDIG before the EuroDIG, and is this somehow connected with youth? Because we propose this topic about greener digital environment, which is here, and I'm super glad. But how young people can participate here, and is this somehow connected? Because I have a feeling that EuroDIG is before, and am I saying correctly if I'm explaining clearly how young people can participate in this session, and how youth voice can be represented here? Thank you.
Yes, you are absolutely right. EuroDIG is before the EuroDIG, but it's not separated in a way that there is a cut, but we want to bring in the young people into the EuroDIG. And as I understood, you made that proposal about shaping greener digital environment.
Yes.
So we contacted the submitters already, offering them a flash session, and the flash session, I will come to that later, it's also somehow explained on the website. The flash session is a 30-minute slot, very focused on one topic, and the submitter or those who are organizing the flash session are absolutely free to do whatever they want. So if you, for instance, invite a school class of Georgian people and talk with them about their experience, that's totally up to you. We are happy to bring you in contact with people who we know from our network that might have had an interest in greener environment. We had a workshop on that last year, so we are happy to collaborate with you. You can contact the Secretariat directly. Does it answer all your questions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, especially when it comes about European level and Georgian level, it should be really interesting to bring together young people from these stages, also with decision makers and stakeholders from business and etc. It will be really nice to discuss together. Thank you.
Next is Olivier.
Yeah, if I could just add, EuroDIG is, I think, comes from years of experience having been at so many IGFs, and I think it all started with having a youth session at IGF. And then several people noticed that the youth session was just filled with young people and few people with white hair. Well, there were only one or two maybe that were there, but there wasn't this mix between young people and everyone else. I went to several young people session at the IGF and thought, wow, this is actually the most intelligent stuff I've learned here, and I've heard. It's refreshing. Why the hell is this not going on in the main session? So we're really trying to push on these main sessions. Now, of course, yes, then you see EuroDIG and then EuroDIG. You might think, well, wait a minute. So does it mean when you're young, you have to go to EuroDIG and then you don't qualify for EuroDIG? That's not at all what it's like. The whole thing about having EuroDIG before and actually having it back to back with EuroDIG is that youth and young people can meet together before the EuroDIG, develop ideas and thinking and so on, and gain confidence in being able to say, hey, you know what, there are other people here who think like me, so as to then be able to stand up during EuroDIG and engage in the dialogue. Often it's a bit intimidating when you go into a new place, you're young, you've got people who've been in the business for 20 years or something, and you think, my goodness, these are all experts, what can I contribute to this? And it's super important that EuroDIG will gives those people who haven't got the confidence, because there are also some young people that will just stand up and talk, but give all of the people that are taking part the confidence to go stand up and be actually totally active in the discussions that will take place. And again, the subject matter experts need to be very focused on seeing if there are panels or a list of speakers that you don't end up with, as you say, men with gray hair or gray beards, but have the gender balance and also the age and geographical, so lots of.
Thank you. Just to follow up on one slightly gray-haired Olivier has just said, I'm still competing with him on this one. I think the youth participation is an ongoing challenge that we have discussed several times at the IGF, at the EuroDIG, and I think that there are two elements. One is sensitizing subject matter experts, the session organizers, that they should be inviting young people to give them some space. Think about it when they prepare the session, but also when, in particular, the moderators. And the other thing is the, let's say, inviting or encouraging the young people, first of all, to be there. And actually, it worked best. Whatever we tried, so like having a youth person on the panel, having a youth person discussing whether youth is a stakeholder or not. This is also another endless discussion. There's some reasons in favor, some reasons against. In Belgrade, it worked best because there were just so many young people showing up, and they were not shy to speak. And this is basically the main condition. We all have to encourage young people to come and to speak and not be afraid to speak. And this goes with what Olivier said. And of course, then the question is how we organize and support and communicate also to young people, maybe in a special way, that they realize this is something where they can actually make their voices heard and not just have to sit in the back and listen. And then again, how to sensitize the organizers to be inviting young people to speak. But the main point is we need to get the people in. Whether we have them officially on a panel or not is not really the point. The point is they need to be there and they need to know that we want them to make their voices heard. Thank you.
Hello, I'm representing the Georgia's Innovation and Technology Agency. You have talked about the youth involvement in the activities, and how about the innovators and startups involvement?
You touch a very tricky point. I was talking to Rusif Plamen during the IGF. He is organizing, or he's Bulgarian, and he's organizing the Webbit Foundation and the Webbit Forum. And he said to me, because we are trying to get these people involved, but we were never successful. I mean, it's even difficult to involve business, but the young startups, it's almost impossible. We had kind of success in Estonia, but not in a significant number. What he told me, he said, those people, they have no time and no interest to participate in governance discussion. And I said, but that's, and he agreed, that's a pity because it affects their business so much. And he said, you are right, but they have other things in their mind when starting a business, when creating ideas. And we are in contact now, and we are trying to find ways how we can maybe involve those people who are behind that level of being a startup, which had been startup maybe 5 years ago, but are now a kind of an established business, and how we can at least bring them in order to share at least the experience from a startup. But he said it's almost impossible to engage startups per se to participate in something that is called internet governance. Maybe we might also change our outreach communication strategy and avoid these heavy words, which is not even easily understandable in all the languages, but to attract them is really a very hard thing to do. But you are really touching a point. Olivier, and then I would like to ask if there are any other questions, because looking at our time, I would rather close that. Are there any other questions after Olivier or comments? Olivier, then you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. Yes, you're absolutely quite right. The startups are too busy working to make money. In the future, time is money. Make.money.fast. Maybe we should call EuroDIG that. But one point though, how many, it's actually a question here, how many people here are coming from maybe other parts of this techno center? Because I think there are quite a few startups in the building. I wondered whether there was anyone from any of the startups here that have joined us. Oh, well, there you go. Ucha, go and knock on the doors. Tell them you can make.money.fast here, faster than remaining in the office. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, so I have a question to you now. We are half an hour.
Can I add something? So that's why I have this question. Can we involve our startups, I mean the Georgian startups and innovators in the activities, or we should wait for the decision? I don't know, the procedures from your side, and then...
You are asking the wrong question now. How can we involve? But yes, you are running into open doors. Please get involved and let's talk individually how we best do it.
Not only to involve that, but organize the panel or session for them.
I think we are talking about it.
Just not only the participation. I mean, to involve in the activities. So.
Liana.
It's on. Okay. So as a follow-up on this startup thing, we do have a startup summit in Armenia, and I am quite sure that our young representatives of this startup, they will be interested to be a part of this panel or discussion, whatever we would decide. So I would be happy to connect to them. Since Tbilisi is very close to Armenia, and that wouldn't be a big issue for them as well to be a part of this. So.
Very good. I think we can just meet each other in a corner and discuss this, and inviting Liana and all the ones who are interested in it. And even Michael with the proposal on day 0, maybe we can do something around that. I think that's... Okay, I have a question to you now. We are half an hour late. We started half an hour late, but the plan was to go through the draft program before lunch break. But I have the feeling energy in this room is going down. So would you like to see the draft program now? Would you like to have a look at it now, or would you prefer to do that after lunch? Who is who is in favor of doing it now? Please raise your hand.
May I quickly jump in? I think the idea was probably that you see it first, then you have some time to think about it over lunch. So why don't we make a 5 minutes, very quick presentation, not taking too much time, but that we have something to think about and to discuss during lunch nevertheless, if that's feasible.
Okay, if everyone is okay with that proposal, I will do a quick run through the draft program. We will start with day 0. As said already, 2 days we have the EuroDIG. EuroDIG includes, by the way, a cooking school, and I'm in contact with our Georgian friends to identify a place where we can do a cooking school. That's just a great team building, just as a side note. We have some proposals already from the CORFA proposals, which will go into the EuroDIG, but of course this program is not yet shaped. I mentioned already the copy fighters. Hopefully we will get them and make a bigger event, or at least that's a bigger slot reserved at the moment for the copyright people. Then from the category access, we have the silver service. We have people in our network which have worked with programs on how to get the elderly, the senior people online, and hopefully we can get a group together who is organizing a 2 hours slot. That's possible, but there is a lot of flexibility in the timing and everywhere. And then one new element, what the Secretariat is proposing to do this year, that we invite all the subject matter experts and inviting newcomers and also the people from the EuroDIG, and give an overview on the categories, what has been submitted, what will be discussed, but also what has been discussed in the past. At EuroDIG, we are trying to avoid just more of the same and discussing the same issues every year. But for those who are attending EuroDIG for the first time, it's of course difficult to catch up what has been discussed the years before. So we will try with this session to somehow bridge between the EuroDIG of the past, of last year and the last 2 years maybe, but also what has been discussed at the IGF maybe, so that these results feed into the EuroDIG and then give a sort of a starting point for EuroDIG the day ahead. Then already asked, and I would say confirmed, UNESCO is asking for a slot. They did a pre-event the years before. I think we will be happy to have them again. The IoT Dynamic Coalition, pardon? Yes? About internet identifiers, about their project. They will do a follow-up on this and present results. I'm sorry. IoT Dynamic Coalition, it's more or less a tradition that they are doing a pre-event to EuroDIG. We are very happy, so because here we can also do a good bridge to the global IGF. 2 open slots, and in the afternoon also a 2-hour slot for the national and regional NRI assembly, where a lot of these proposals from the category internet governance development ecosystem went into that. I will not take questions on this now. As Thomas said, just a quick glance and food for thought for the lunch break. On day 1, you will see we more or less kept, or those who are familiar with EuroDIG, we more or less kept the structure of EuroDIG from last year and actually from the last 2 or 3 years, because this program structure was fine-tuned every year, and last year it worked out really well, also with respect to give a balance between high-level speakers and open discussion, open for everyone. We need some high-level people, this attracts others to come, but on the other hand, you all know that high-level speakers usually do not attend very engaged and openly in panel discussion. For instance, not many ministers or head of states are really keen to sit on a panel and participate in a program planning process in order to be then able to participate in a multi-stakeholder discussion. But they want to have 10 minutes full attention, and therefore this program structure was kept from last year because it worked out quite well. We will do a short welcome dedicated mainly to the host, and then a few words from the EuroDIG crowd. We keep that, for the moment, we kept that plenary of the open mic session, just to explain you a background why we have this open mic session at the beginning. We have been criticized, I think it was Berlin, Michael might remember that very well, when we were open with a high-level plenary. On this high-level plenary, we had gray-suited old men. And the topic was good, the people were good, but we got criticism in the first session when a woman stood up and said, "This is bad." And the issue here is that sometimes if you want to have these high-level people in the first plenary, sometimes they are only men. That's just difficult to handle sometimes. So what we did, we said, okay, let's set the scene and let's give the community the voice first. And let's start with an open mic session where everyone can actually say what they want to say. And so that we also get the tone right for this 2 days, so that we really invite participants from the very first session to discuss. Then it was mentioned already, the lightning talk. We would like to hear about the Tosheti project. This can be also the opening for the exhibition, which is then going on for the next 2 days. And after the Tosheti project, we thought it's good to discuss access in the community, what Olivier in his category mentioned already, but really based on how to connect people and make that Tosheti project kind of a model case, and then see what else has been or what else is going on in Europe and how can we learn from each other. Olivier?
Yes, thanks, Sandra. And just to add, with actually two aspects, two sides of the same coin. One being community networking, the other one being commercial networking. The two are complementary, and there would be really interesting discussion on this.
We expect that during this plenary we will have a lot of Georgian participation, because here I really think, and also therefore it's on purpose on day one, I really think here we are in the right country to talk about these issues. In parallel to the first plenary, we have the educational track on DNS, how it works. This will be part of the youth program, be part of the newcomers program. These sessions are usually very well attended because some people really like to learn about the basics. And then after a lunch break, where we, depending on the venue, might have also a speaker's corner where everyone who is not yet in the program or not in the program by May might still have an opportunity to say, hello, I have something to say, and here's your audience. So this is a proposal. We will see if we get that into the program once we are closer to the date. And then we have parallel workshops. At the moment, according to the venue, we have 4 parallel workshops and then flash sessions. Flash sessions, I said already, flexible format, 30 minutes. They don't even need a room. They can be in an open space so that everyone can just pass by, similar to a speaker's corner. So this is something, once we have decided final decision on the venue, we will know how we handle this. As a follow-up from this educational track, people, once they learned about the DNS, how it works, they can go DNS, what makes it and what breaks it. Here it is more about DNS security and all the issues related to DNS. This is not an educational track anymore, but it's a follow-up from the educational track. Then we have workshop 2 on human rights, online privacy, old problems, emerging solution. There were quite a lot of proposals submitted under this, and as Farzaneh said, we are not discussing, yes, it exists, we want to discuss what are the solutions, more solution-oriented. Third workshop, digitizing European industries and citizen services. We just discussed, Marit just presented this cluster, and it was with quite a lot of discussion in this room. And again, an educational track on blockchain. It was mentioned already, this educational track we had last year already. The room was crowded. It was a very good session, and as this issue is still on top of the agenda, we kept it for the moment, and as there will be a session on blockchain later on, I think it's good to have the basics here in order to focus on the session more in detail. Then we will have the coffee break, and here is space for a keynote. Last year we had the Norwegian Prime Minister speaking in that slot. I hope we will get other high-level speakers, maybe from this region, again. And then the last plenary of the days will be on media. This is on remedies to social media ills. Earlier introduced us to this topic, and in parallel we have the educational track on GDPR, but I have the feeling that this was a thing where we should have more discussions in the room. All the flash sessions, just to let you know, they will not be assigned at the moment, only when the program is consolidated, because when assigning flash sessions, we have to see that we avoid overlaps. So this comes later. We are not discussing where a flash will be held today. We have at the moment 21 flash proposals for 12 slots. From our experience, not everyone will be really willing to do a flash. So we will deal with that later, and not really today. And then the second day, we have reserved a very early slot, and I learned in Georgia 8 o'clock is actually a time that does not exist, so I'm sorry for that. But this comes from our experience that in 2013, you might remember, with the Snowden's revelations, a topic came up 2 weeks before EuroDIG, and it was obviously not in the agenda. But there was such a demand to discuss this topic that we said, let's do something. So we reserved that slot in the morning. If something equally important comes up, people will have the opportunity to meet very early, and we will serve some coffee. And then we will start with a keynote in the morning, and the plenary on data economy and growth in Europe. Here we do expect some high-level participants, for the keynote, of course, and also for the plenary. And with this, we would also like to give our dedication to the overwhelming number of proposals in this category, innovation. After this, we have a coffee break, and then we go through the day with before lunch and after lunch with parallel sessions. Here we have this mixed workshop where we have both aspects, IoT economy, opportunities and security challenges. This will focus very much on trust, but also on the opportunities IoT might bring. Then we have workshop 5, TLDs, IDNs, general universal acceptance. A workshop on human rights, surveillance laws and governments versus internet rights, and platform and data neutrality, access to content. Lunch break. During the lunch break, as EuroDIG is an association that requires one time a year and General Assembly, we will do that here. This is an open event, you can attend it, but members of the association will just do their annually business and do this General Assembly. After lunch break, we continue with the follow-up workshop from workshop 4, artificial intelligence replacing human rights, ethics and future of the work. We believe they are interrelated, and especially this workshop has a very big human rights related component. So here we are really merging two categories, human rights and innovation. Then we have this session on cybersecurity, where Tanya mentioned today that this was really rather clear. Many proposals went into the same direction, and this will focus on security and norm-making processes. And then we have a workshop, freedom of expression versus regulation. That's a proposal comes from media. It has been discussed in the past a lot, but as there is still great demand to discuss about these issues, we will see how this workshop shapes up. But the proposals have been, as Uri said us during the call, kind of more of the same, but because also in this region might have a special attention, we put it into the program. And then we have a gray category, which is kind of cross-cutting, and this is on consumer rights and cross-border e-commerce. This is also a session where many proposals from different categories came together, and we will see how this shapes up. If a session does not shape up, if we call for focal points and nobody is willing to take up responsibility, then this session goes out of the program and another one from day 0 or from a flash session will come into the program of the main days. This happened in the past, and in order to be sure that we can deliver a session that is in the program, we have to make sure that we find an org team and a focal point. And if this is not the case, then it goes out. The secretariat or subject matter experts are not organizing any session. Then a coffee break and another keynote. Last year this slot was taken by Göran Marby, the CEO of ICANN. And then the last plenary will be about blockchain type technologies. This will include blockchain and digital currency, but we called on purpose blockchain type technologies because we want to look at it a little bit broader than only currencies and all these things. And then we will do the wrap-up. The wrap-up, here we can experiment a little bit. During our EuroDIG retreat, it was proposed that during the wrap-up we are looking a little bit further how EuroDIG should evolve and develop. This is one way to go. There might be others. This is up to discussion. And with this I finish, and I think lunch is served outside. And you can, of course, click through a presentation on this computer if you want to have a look at the program, but it's also online.
So, Sandra, just if I could catch Sandra's attention. So we are breaking for the break now, lunch break. At what time are we meeting again, please? Because everyone's leaving and...
Half past 1.
1:30. So we're effectively looking at in 45 minutes time. So the lunch break will be 45 minutes for those people joining us remotely. So we'll be away. At the moment, it's local time 1:45, and we will meet again in 45 minutes at 1:30. Thank you for joining us.